Let me ask you something. If I told you that the difference between someone who builds real wealth and someone who stays broke their entire life comes down to a single number, just one threshold, would you believe me? Most people think wealth is about income. Make more money, become wealthier. Simple, right? But here it gets interesting. There are people earning $30,000 a year who quietly build more wealth than doctors and lawyers pulling in $200,000. And there are people with six-figure salaries who are, financially speaking, one bad month away from disaster. So what's the actual difference? It's not discipline. It's not luck. It's not even knowledge, really. It's a number. $10,000. And the way you cross it, or don't, tells you almost everything about your financial future. Here's the story most of us grow up believing. You go to school, you get a job, you earn a paycheck. You pay your bills, maybe save a little, and over time, things slowly get better. If you want more money, you work harder. If you want to get ahead, you grind longer hours, get a raise, pick up a side hustle. The idea is simple. More effort equals more money equals more wealth. And on the surface, that sounds completely logical. But here's the problem. Most people who follow that exact formula their entire lives end up at retirement with almost nothing saved. Not because they didn't work hard, not because they earned decent money, but because they were playing the wrong game the whole time. They were focused on earning more, not on what happens after the money arrives. Think about it this way. Imagine you have a bucket and you're trying to fill it with water. You keep pouring and pouring, but the bucket has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, the level never really rises. That's what most people's financial lives look like. The paycheck is the water. The lifestyle, the spending, the lifestyle inflation, that's the hole. And here's the part nobody talks about. The first $10,000 is the patch that seals the hole. So what exactly is the $10,000 rule? It goes like this. The hardest, most psychologically brutal financial milestone you will ever cross is getting your first $10,000 saved. Not invested, not optimized, just saved and sitting there, untouched. And the reason it's so hard has almost nothing to do with math. It's because of something psychologists call present bias. Our brains are wired to value things that feel good right now far more than things that will benefit us in the future. A coffee today feels real. A comfortable retirement in 30 years feels like a fairy tale. So when you get paid, your brain isn't thinking about compound interest. It's thinking about the new phone, the trip with friends, the slightly nicer apartment. Every financial decision is being made by a version of you that lives entirely in the present. And saving $10,000 forces you to fight that instinct over and over again until you finally win. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once you cross that threshold, something changes, both psychologically and practically. Let's break down both sides. On the practical side, $10,000 is the number where money starts doing something it couldn't do before. It starts working for you. At $500 in savings, a single car repair wipes you out. At $2,000, an unexpected medical bill destroys months of effort. At $5,000, you're okay, but you're still fragile. One real emergency and you're back to zero. But at $10,000, you have a buffer. You have breathing room. You stop making expensive decisions because you're desperate. And that's enormous, because desperation is one of the most costly financial states a person can be in. Think about what happens when you're broke and your car breaks down. You take the first loan you're offered because you have no choice. You pay whatever the mechanic charges because you can't afford to wait. You might even miss work, which costs you even more income. Now think about what happens when you have $10,000 sitting in a savings account. You have options. You negotiate. You shop around. You don't panic. That calm, that optionality, it's worth thousands of dollars over a lifetime of decisions. But the psychological shift is actually even more powerful than the practical one. Here's something fascinating. Research in behavioral economics shows that the way we think about money changes based on how much of it we have. When people feel financially insecure, their decision-making gets narrower. They focus on immediate problems, they avoid thinking about the future, and they become more risk-averse in ways that actually hurt them long-term. Psychologists call this scarcity mindset. When you don't have enough, your brain goes into tunnel vision mode. All you can think about is the immediate shortage, and ironically, that tunnel vision causes people to make worse financial decisions, which keeps them in scarcity, which keeps the tunnel vision going. It's a loop, and $10,000 is often the number that breaks it. Once you cross that threshold, you don't just have more money, you start thinking about money differently. You stop making reactive decisions and start making proactive ones. You start seeing a future version of yourself that actually has options. And that mental shift, that change in your financial identity, is worth more than the $10,000 itself. There's also something called the momentum effect. The first $10,000 is the hardest. The next $10,000 is a little easier. The $10,000 after that comes faster still. Not just because you're earning more, but because your habits, your psychology, and your relationship with money have all been rewired by crossing that first threshold. It's the same reason that first pull-up is infinitely harder than the 20th. Your muscles are different. Your belief in yourself is different. Your technique is sharper. The action itself has changed you. Saving money works the same way. Here's another angle. Most people think of savings as deprivation. Every dollar you save is a dollar you didn't spend on something fun. Every sacrifice today is something you're losing right now. But wealthy people, people who've crossed that first $10,000 and kept going, they flip that script entirely. They don't see saving as losing something. They see it as buying freedom. Every $10,000 you accumulate is another layer of insulation between you and desperation, another degree of control over your own life, another step toward the point where you're working because you want to, not because you have no choice. That reframe, from sacrifice to investment in freedom, is one of the most powerful psychological shifts in personal finance, and it almost always begins at that first $10,000. So what do you actually do with this? First, if you haven't hit $10,000 in savings yet, make it your singular obsession. Not retirement accounts, not stock picks, not crypto, just $10,000 in a savings account that you don't touch. Treat it like a subscription you pay to your future self. Automate it if you can. Set up an automatic transfer the day your paycheck lands before you have a chance to spend it. Pay yourself first. Make saving the default, not the afterthought. Cut the big things before you stress about the small things. Everyone talks about skipping lattes, but the research is clear. It's housing, transportation, and food that eat most people's budgets. One smart decision on any of those three categories can be worth hundreds of lattes. And here's the most important tactical tip. Give your $10,000 a name. Not literally, but psychologically. Research shows that people save significantly more money when they label their savings for a specific purpose rather than just calling it savings. Call it your freedom fund. Call it your breathing room account. Call it your options reserve. Whatever language resonates with you, label it so your brain understands what it actually represents. Because here's the truth. That $10,000 isn't just money. It's a different version of you, a calmer version. A version that doesn't panic when something goes wrong, a version that has enough runway to make good decisions instead of desperate ones. Second, once you hit $10,000, don't stop. Start thinking about what that money can do. High-yield savings accounts, index funds, the basics of investing. Because $10,000 invested in a simple index fund, left alone for 30 years at an average historical return, becomes somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000. You did the hard part, crossing the threshold. Now let the math do the rest. And third, share this idea with someone you care about. The reason financial education doesn't spread fast enough is because we treat money like a taboo topic. But the $10,000 threshold isn't embarrassing or complicated. It's a simple, concrete goal that anyone can understand and chase. Here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Most people spend their whole lives focused on earning more, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the people who actually end up with wealth, real, lasting, life-changing wealth, they discovered something else early on. The goal isn't to earn more. The goal is to keep enough to matter, to cross the